Welcome, everyone, to the Cardano Effect Podcast, episode 58. The purpose of this podcast is to take high-level developer information and projects that are occurring within the Cardano space and break them down into bite-sized, consumable pieces of information for everyday use. I'm your host, Philippe, and let's get this podcast started. We have a very special podcast episode today. It's something unique. The testnet, the first snapshot, is happening this week by the time this episode releases. So this is a very timely episode. We're going to get right into the mix of things. I just want to remind everyone that none of what we say on this podcast is financial advice. Remember, you are your best financial advisor. And if you don't think you are, you need to find someone who's qualified to do so. So without further ado, Rick, how are you doing today? What's going on? What's happening?
Hey, good morning, Philippe. Thanks for the introductions. And I want to give a big thank you to IOHK for sponsoring this podcast. I'd also like to remind any viewers who are new to this podcast, the podcast is available on all audio streaming services, all major streaming services, and over 50 apps. So if you'd like to listen to audio version, you can find it available on your favorite app. And today we have many people joining us today. It is the stake pool operators. And so with us today, we have Eystein Hansen, Marek, Mark Stopka, Johnny, and Kyle, all here. All have been working very hard in Telegram and on Jormungandr to get the Jormungandr testnet up and running, okay? And so for today's introductions, what I'm going to do is we'll go around the room. I'm going to start off with Eystein, and the first question here is, what is your name? What is the name of your stake pool? And what are your poll goals? And we'll just go around the room. Eystein, welcome.
Okay, thank you for having me here. My name is Eystein Hansen. My stake pool is named adanorthpool.com. And my main goal, basically, as of now, is just to have geographical diversification of Cardano. So that we are many from different geographical regions. And for the future, I hope to maybe found some ideas or something to help the ecosystem. So a part of the money will go back to the ecosystem.
Excellent.
All right.
Thank you. Marek.
Okay, so...
Hey, everyone. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I think it's me and then... So I will start. So thank you guys for having me. My name is Marek, and my stake pool name is StakeNet. And the goal of the stake pool, the main goal, I would say, is actually decentralization. So I would like to see how far we can push decentralization and still have a reliable blockchain network.
All right. Thank you, Marek. Mark Stopka.
Okay, so as you already mentioned, my name is Mark, and the name of the pool, at least for the testnet, is better late than never. With 3 years of delay. And the main goal of the pool is basically run a sustainable and reliable infrastructure for everybody who I got involved into the Cardano ecosystem, because I got involved a lot of people into the Cardano like 2 years ago, and a lot more during the period from that time on. So, it's my responsibility to run the reliable infrastructure for them.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. Johnny?
Yes, my name is Johnny Johnson. The name of my stake pool is Cardano HODL, HODL.com. And basically, my goal is, since I'm an early investor in Cardano and have been preaching from my soapbox for a very long time to others, is to provide basically a place where people can stake reliably and provide consistent support to those individuals that have an interest in staking.
All right. Thank you, Johnny. Kyle.
Hey, everyone. Name's Kyle. I'm running the Lovelace community pool. Everybody's come up with some great ideas that I'll just take. So decentralization, reliability, but the main goal for mine is that it's for the community. I've got a bunch of resources that are just sitting there doing nothing, and happy to, help the goal of Cardano by offering a free pool.
Excellent. Thank you, Kyle. And I appreciate everybody's contributions from your Telegram, your contribution to Telegram, your web pages where you've provided instructions, the different monitoring tools. So thank you all for all of the work that you've put into this. Now, a very common question that comes up from new stake pool operators. You guys are like the experts. I consider y'all expert level we got to grow our own experts, right? And new people join and they say, hey, what kind of hardware do I need? What does it run on this? Does it run on that? You get a lot of those questions. So the next question we're going to touch on here was, which operating system, which hardware, which cloud service do you prefer and why, to kind of help give people an idea of what they're looking at and what your opinions and expertise are. So we'll go back to Eystein and say, what do you prefer? Operating system, hardware, what do you like?
Right. Okay. So for me, I'm kind of a technical geek, but I'm not super IT knowledgeable. But what I did was I figured out Ubuntu is regularly updated. It has many guides on safety, and it's basically quite easy to use as well. So for me, it was Ubuntu Linux distribution. Hardware-wise, my goal was just to try to use as little power as possible and still redundant. So I figured a laptop actually is perfect for that because you can have a built-in battery. So if the power goes, you still have the power there. So I went with Intel that's drawing 65 watts and 8 gigabytes of RAM, because I think the RAM issues, there's a few RAM issues. So that's my main recommendation is get a bit RAM extra. And that should make your pool stable.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks. Let's go over to Marek. I'll just go the same order. Marek, what do you got? What's your favorite operating system, hardware? What works for you, man?
So the main operating system I use all the time is Nexus. I'm one of the contributors, and I actually think it's fitting quite good into the ecosystem itself. Even IOHK is also using Nexus for deploying their nodes, and it's a purely functional declarative operating system, which I think brings a lot of benefits for also future system administrators. And as for the hardware, I think it's quite early to tell. I think we will see the hardware requirements be a little bit more clear in the future. But for now, I would probably encourage everyone in the testnet to just test it on everything. Everything you get, just put it on your mobile phone, put it on your smart watches. We need as much as data as possible to actually come up with the recommendation profile, I would say.
And that's coming from a guy who did a test on a plane and a train.
Yeah.
It's Marek.
Try that as well.
Yeah, if you're not familiar with that, you can go on Twitter and check out the images. You took a couple videos, which was very impressive. So that was awesome.
It was. All right. So Mark, you want to go for it? Mark Stopka, what do you got, buddy?
Yeah, so I managed to secure quite a good financing for ARM-based Taishan from Huawei. So our pool is going to run on the ARM infrastructure with operating system licenses provided by SUSE for quite a bit of discount as well. And it should help with mediating all those Spectre and meltdown vulnerabilities that's been found out in the x86 architecture. So that was the decision for ARM platform. And apart from that, where the actual staking is going to happen, we also going to deploy lots of those Cardano on the rocks as a passive relay node.
Cool. So the SUSE Linux, the one with the little lizard thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
The one.
Yeah, cool, man. Nice. Johnny, what kind of hardware you running? Operating system? What do you got going?
Before I say which, I will say in all of my reading, the most compelling case by far definitely has been Linux. What I've read and what I've seen, and there's all the reasons in the world to go with Linux. But in my case, all of my experience, my entire career, I'm a Windows guy. So, and I also have access to a rack of servers in a cage in a data center, and with some servers that are available to use. So what I did was, in my particular case, I wanted to see if I could actually get a node running on Windows Server 2008 R2. So that's a step back. And I was able to actually get it up and running, the node actually running and, able to install all the proper components. So I was pretty happy and impressed with that. But it looks like on the Windows side, it may trail a little bit in terms of, everything that's happening with Linux. And then, looks like the support will be there for Windows So I'm keeping a close eye on how well that goes with the final installers that they come up with. So far, I've been pleased with the fact that I was actually able to get it running on that particular version of Windows in my particular case.
It's a 64-bit version?
Yes, that's correct.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Johnny. Let's go over to Kyle. Kyle, what's your favorite hardware, operating system? What do you got going on?
Operating system-wise, it's Debian or Ubuntu. Hardware-wise, I've got some colo machines and data centers that I'm using. I'm also using my ReadyNAS at home, which is just a Debian box, and a VM that have been let me run out of his colo box. Plan to probably run some relay nodes in a cloud place, but we'll see. I've got a bunch of stuff, kind of France, Germany, Toronto, New York. So,
holy cow! How many nodes you got running?
5.
Okay, let's do that next. Who's got the most nodes running? I got 1.
I've got 1.
I got 1/2.
One now.
I have a cluster of 100 running right now, but that's okay.
I got between 1 and 10 depending on how do I feel about it.
Okay.
100.
Marek's going to fork Cardano. Awesome. All right. So thanks, guys, for all the information, and I hope that helps the viewers. And the next part we were going to go on to was what have you found to be the most rewarding participating in a Cardano testnet? Philippe, did you have anything you wanted to add, intro, or get us up and running between all the different folks we got on the podcast?
I'm going to wait till after this question. I had a follow-up question regarding the architecture of what they're running, but I think that we should keep that towards the end. So I'm going to come back to that question.
Okay. So I'll lead off with this one. What have you found the most rewarding part of working on this? And that is all the guys you see here. I bugged them on Telegram and they spoon feed me how to run a node. Just kidding. So let's go back to Eystein. What have you found most rewarding?
Well, for me, it's like I think I'm like the little guy here, just a hobby for me, and it's so great to see that I was able to do this. I just read the guides, and it was really easy to do once you study the guides. And we have here like all the different operation systems, Linux, SUSE, we have ARM processors, we have Intel processors, we have AMD processors, everything works out. And that's, for me, it's like really amazing to see. And to be honest, the first builds, that was a lot of rough times, but it got so much better so fast. So for me, that's pretty much the best part of this whole testing period, and I think we'll look back at this. It's quite a historic moment, really, this testing period. So yeah, that's also special for me just to have participated in this.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Marek.
So a few months ago, I would probably say it's the technology itself, but now after a few weeks of the testnet, I would say it's really the community itself, because I really find that the people that are working not only on the IOHK side, but also the community who is actually putting their free time in it. It's just amazing. And I mean, even if this whole project doesn't work out at the end, I think it's a great feeling that we actually tried. And it's a great feeling actually to see the community is really helping each other. And this is actually the most rewarding thing for me, to see that the people there are trying so hard.
Thank you. Mark?
Okay, so, I joined the project because it's very science-based, but I don't have a science background. I have an engineering background, and I enjoyed finding bugs in the software since I was a little kid, and this is just the big buggy software that I like to play with because, you find a lot of them, you report them, and you find them fixed next day or in 2 days, and that's very agile and very rapid development, something that I'm not used to from the past as part of the bigger project. If you reported a bug in a GCC, it takes a month or 2 before the updated release gets out. Here you have it. Here you have it in 2 days. So I like that I find the most rewarding that the bugs and the issues you identify are fixed rapidly.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Johnny?
Yeah, what's most rewarding for me is just the sheer amount of effort and amount of openness that's going into building this product in terms of the community. I've been around since 2017 as far as being involved with the project, just at an investor level. And then as the Telegram groups and you guys have popped up and come on board, it's just amazing what's being built and the amount of documentation that's being put out there. And I think there's a lot more opportunities for more documentation and also being able to automate some of the installation process. But just, it's just a mammoth task and it's getting done. So for me, that's been the most rewarding, just kind of sitting back, observing and seeing the final outcome of where we're heading, attending the IOHK summit, seeing all of the GUIs and things of that nature centered around staking. It just is very exciting. So can't wait until that aspects of it, comes to fruition.
Thank you, Johnny. Kyle?
So for me, I think originally it was just a lot of fun trying to get it working. I think back in April, May, I was messing around with a very, very poorly documented piece of code. And just to be able to get it to work, piecing things together was a lot of fun. The node itself back in May wasn't anywhere near it is today, but to get it working was a lot of fun. And then the next kind of bit was I just created really simple documentation and gave it to the community, and everybody just kind of jumped on it. And so it was really nice to help people. So that's pretty rewarding as well. So see this time that you struggled to try to figure out how something worked, and then that you can help someone else struggle less, hopefully. So yeah.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you. So I have a follow-up question for all of you. So I want to get into a topic that Rick and I discussed previously, and it was off air probably a couple weeks ago. And we're talking about the distribution of different nodes within the Cardano ecosystem. And from what you've told me from your system requirements and what servers you're running, it seems like there's a mix. I mean, some people are running servers that are in data centers, and it goes all the way down to Rock Pies sitting in people's home office or bedroom. So moving into the future, Cardano is touted as this new financial system, and it's going to be able to process a lot of transactions and ultimately be the backbone for governments, institutions, and everything like that. So where do you see server evolution for the Cardano ecosystem? Do you think that this is something that's going to exist in the future with low-powered equipment like Rock Pies compared to high-processing equipment like servers? Or do you think, are we going to move towards one side? Are we moving towards the lower side? Or is it going to be an amalgamation of everything in the middle? Where do you think that this will evolve to, given the milestones of the Cardano project? I'm not sure if my question is clear, but let me know if I need to elaborate. Eystein?
Okay, that's actually a really interesting question for me. Once you said that, my mind started to think of many things. First of all, I remember on the staking pool channel in Telegram, there was a guy who managed to run a pool on a mobile phone, wasn't it? Android. For me, that was really awesome because I can just imagine the future, for example, in countries where you don't have access to all that hardware and most people have access to a mobile phone. And if you can be able to run this transaction through pools on those mobile phones, that will be amazing. At the same time, I think transactions volume is going to increase dramatically. So I'm thinking about sharding and about maybe some type of transactions could be done on the EC on the phone, and maybe other that need a lot of computation, if it's smart contracts or something like that, maybe needs still to be some form of hardware-based, more advanced hardware-based. What I hope for is more decentralization, cheaper, and that the barrier to entry is very low. That's good for the community, I think.
Okay. Did anyone else want to chime in? Johnny?
Yeah, I'll chime in on that. Yeah, I do believe it'll be an amalgamation in terms of somewhere in the middle. And I think a lot of that is going to be dependent on ease of installation in terms of all these different devices that are out there. And I think at the end of the day, you let it just kind of fall out where it does in terms of the reliability and availability of those nodes to actually perform the staking. So those that are more reliable, if they happen to be in a data center, then obviously there'll probably be a tendency for people to kind of direct themselves, towards that direction. Or if, in the middle of the ground, some of these other devices prove to be just as reliable, they're easy to set up, they're low cost, I think it's beneficial to have them be part of the ecosystem in general, because that's just going to draw more people, bring more awareness, participation, and that's what you want at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Thanks, Johnny.
I also think we will see a lot of push actually for alternative stake pool installation in Africa and third world countries where the infrastructure is not so advanced. So I also think it will go for both directions. We will have like private stake pool, which are really focused on the rewards and uptime, and then you have nodes which are more focused on the decentralization.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, we do need to see some more nodes come online in Africa, because between the two maps of Cardano.pub and the map I'm running, there's one in South Africa, there might be two down there, and then I don't see any more. So hopefully that.
We need to shout out to John O'Connor. He needs to start running a node in Ethiopia, wherever he's located.
Yeah, let's put some heat on John.
Yeah.
John, you got a nice house there. Put up a note. Kyle, what's your take? Kyle, don't you have you got a huge data center or something like that? You're running. I saw you had your U limit set to 130,000. That's got to be some kind of beast server.
Yeah, I mean, the U limit setting it's not really dependent on underlying hardware for the most part. It's just kind of a protection that's in place. But in terms of what I see hardware in the future, I guess it really depends. From a transactional only processing system, I imagine a Roth Pi or something simple like that would be fine. Assuming that there's some kind of stable connection and redundant power supply, whatever. But I think once we get into the world of smart contracts, there may be different requirements for different nodes to be able to offer interesting applications. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, with Moore's law, right? The further we go on, the cheaper hardware is going to be, the more performant it's going to be. So I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. Mark, did you want to add anything?
So, with the development of smart contracts and other features like side chains and so on, there will definitely be a need for more processing. If you imagine smart contracts without the Oracle services are useless, because you cannot get data from the outside world, which you need for any reasonable smart contract platform to perform. So the question is it going to be a second type of node that's going to provide the Oracle services, or are there people going to consolidate it with their staking pool? If they are going to consolidate with the staking pools, then definitely the resource requirements for the pools will grow. If it's going to be a separate service, then the transaction processing will probably stay within the same bounds as we have now. If you look at the sign chains, it requires zero knowledge proofs. So those are quite computationally heavy. So that could be a big strain on resources once the side chain functionality will be available.
So as a baseline, right now for starting up, you need to have at least 4 gig of RAM. But in the future, we could see an possible increase in processing power required. That's just my take on it. But I'm a Mac OS X guy, so
I think that's a good problem to have, and I think that if the power requirements increase over time, it just goes to show you how much Cardano is actually being used. Because, like Eystein was saying, we're lowering the barrier to entry, but at the same time, if the requirements are higher, it means that we're processing more transactions and more people are involved. So I think that's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, but I think on the other hand, we will see a lot of performance tuning over time, because right now it's not the right time to do those kind of like tunings. We are just focusing right now to make it like a working network, right? But over time, we will have more time. I guess a lot of people will push for like higher performance for lower price.
I mean, the memory consumption and the networking requirements with the latest releases reduced dramatically. I mean, you can see half the network utilization with the latest commits that are part of the RC7. So,
I also add, like Kylo says, that the hardware is improving all the time. Already, like a mobile has 6 to 8 gigabytes of RAM. So who knows? In the future, maybe mobile will be enough for even large transaction volumes.
Yeah, quite possibly. And so the next section we're going to go to, the next thing we're going to talk about was what challenges have you overcome? And as all of you know, if you ran the Jormungandr version 0.6.0, 0.5 seemed pretty stable. 0.6, things got rough. They got rough. Fortunately, in the past week, 0.7 release candidate 7 came out, and we're seeing a lot better performance on that. At least I am on the version I'm running. So the question here is, what challenges have you overcome? Either hardware or personal, how much time you have available, anything. What kind of challenges have you overcome participating in this testnet? Who wants to go first? Anybody?
I'll go.
I go first. Okay, Kyle, go first.
Being patient or not being patient. That's it. I mean,
That's it.
From a technology standpoint, it's kind of like I'm used to the space. I've been in the industry. I'm familiar with technology, so I haven't really overcome any technology challenges. It's just been being patient. It's been challenging.
I agree.
Okay.
Mark Stockton?
Yeah, so for me it was that 0.6 got released just when I was traveling to Bulgaria for the second anniversary meetup, and those were busy days, and I was like eager to test it, deploy it, and everything. So the time it was really I was really frustrated that I cannot focus on the testing because I have other commitments. I need to attend meetings and stuff like that. So definitely the biggest challenge to overcome in the beginning was to find the time, and now it's just like whenever you report an issue, you just wait a couple of days, it's fixed. The challenges are disappearing slowly, but surely. So
for me, actually, I struggled a lot early with firewall issues, and the first RC1, 2, 3 was not working well. I think the software update to the ProleteR cost was better, and then it started finally working for me. And actually, I read the guides of Kylio that's here, and that helped a lot too. So thank you for those guides, Kylio.
We're going to link all of your websites down below. So make sure I've got it in a Telegram. I have Kyle's Lovelace community. If anyone hasn't used that yet, any new people, we need 1,000 pools, or the goal is 1,000 pools. Right now we got about 200 and a few. If you go to Kylo's Lovelace community website, you can just follow the script. You got to have basic IT skills though. And that's probably why Kyle, my patience was a little thin too with myself. But people have to have basic IT skills with their computer. What were the most common problems we saw? I'll let you guys speak to it. When new people come into the Telegram or they come into the community, what's the most common problems? Firewall?
I guess one would be the networking, and the second one would be that people follow a guide that is already outdated because the software is developing so rapidly. When they released the RC6, everybody was coming onto the Telegram with their RC3 configuration files and like, why it doesn't work? And we are like, yeah, well, that's outdated. You cannot use it anymore, and so on and so forth. So it's the biggest issue for the new people is like they Google some guide and it's outdated. They follow it and then they are frustrated because it doesn't work. And the first thing when they come to the Telegram chat is like, Yeah, you dummy, you've been following the wrong guys.
I think, yeah, I agree with that. I think patience is one of the challenges for all of us. We are like, all of us are really excited, but we tend to forget that people who are developing this software, mostly IOHK, that's their daily job, and they have families. And just looking at past few days, the time from 06 to 07 release candidates was, I guess, less than 2 weeks, which is a really short amount of time for a software to get like so many updates. And I think this is that's the patient itself, because when there is a new release on GitHub, I see people are actually starting to compile it sooner than the GitHub bot is picking it up for the compilation. So it's amazing.
Yeah, but that's caused because it's run by Travis, and Travis is overloaded all the time.
But I think Mark has a great point, because it's always on the Telegram, like people asking the configs, and they use the configs from the old builds. So yeah, a link to the latest guide is really helpful.
This is a work in progress, so anyone that's interested in coming in new, it's not like these things are going to be deployed very soon. It's constant iterations that are added on. So, if you have basic skills, or you don't have the skills ready, maybe it's good to just sit it out until the main release comes out, or when things stabilize a little bit more, and then get involved.
Yeah, I agree with that, Philippe. And I think what's going to benefit a lot of people is eventually the documentation will catch up, because right now things are just so dynamic and moving so fast. Eventually it will catch up, and they're going to have videos, they're going to have the proper documentation, and also the scripts that at least give people a good running start to get the base setup going, and then the little tweaks depending on your particulars in terms of your environment. So we're getting there.
It's taking time. That's where the patience comes in handy.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So I have a really big question for our viewers, and what we can do is start with Kyle or Johnny, and then we'll go back the other way, or whoever wants to talk next is. And the question was, do you have any recommendations for experience or learning that a new pool operator should have? Any recommendations at all? A new pool operators coming online, they come to you for help, or whatever the case may be. What do you recommend they know before they start and after? Recommended learning, recommended experience?
I can take it. So you should figure out how to compile software. It doesn't have to be Jormungandr. Just figure out how to compile software and install software in whatever operating system that you're using. Maybe something that is a little more well documented, like a web server, or WordPress on top of a web server. Something that's like you can just quickly Google, how do I install this piece of software? Be it compile it or install it or whatever it is, just so you have familiarity with installing something that is trusted, widely used, well documented. And then the next bit would just be, if you've got, once you get that something installed, assuming it's a service of some kind, like WordPress or Apache, try to get that to work through your firewall, because these are things that are easily debuggable because everybody's using them. And if you can get Apache or a WordPress site to get loaded on your machine, then you know that that plumbing is working. So once you've got that stuff working, then try to get Jormungandr installed and working and configured, because you've got a little more familiarity with how kind of a known process works.
Wow, that's good advice. I think I'll take your advice. Johnny?
I also say definitely leverage the Telegram group, all the various resources that are available, including there have been some that are posting YouTube videos. And the videos in a lot of cases seem to be the best, because not only do you have the audio, but the visual to see what's happening, what's occurring, and what things should look like for you. But it's a matter of just leveraging these resources that are out there. And then I also seeing that IOHK, the resources are very responsive in terms of any problems that are reported through their use of Zendesk and other tools that they have. So that would be my advice.
Thanks, Johnny. Mark?
Okay, so when Kyle mentioned get yourself familiar with compiling or building software in general, it reminded me of the experience that I had like 20 years ago. I moved from RPM-based Linux version that doesn't exist anymore to Gen 2 just to learn the skills, and building the system from scratch gave me so much learning experience that it moved me way ahead in my sysadmin skills. So, I think that could be a good exercise just to learn the operating system internals and really understand the system that is underneath of the application that you are trying to run on top of your operating system stack. So, just get really familiar with your operating system, and then deploying the application is going to be way more easier.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Marek?
So I will maybe build on top of this. So if you have any sysadmin skills already, I highly recommend everyone to just go and read the specification from the IOHK. It's really helpful. You don't have to understand it all, but if you read it and you understand just 1%, you are 1% smarter of a specification, right?
Okay. Thank you, Marek. Eystein?
Oh, great advice so far. I will also try to build upon it. Two things. Decide if you're going to run a single pool or a cluster of pools. Maybe read about clustering type of software. And the other one is Mark Guffler, the Cardano on the Rocks. He has a great guide that also touches on security. And I think security is going to be a big deal. And for me, I'm not that used to thinking security. I'm used to doing this as a hobby. So for me, that's a big learning curve I have to adapt to. So how to make it secure and stable.
So
Okay.
maybe if I can just have one more input, since you mentioned security, it was discussed in the Telegram channel, but there is this organization called Center for Information Security, and they released something called CIA's baselines for majority of the operating systems, and it's basically very good document that goes step by step of what you should configure on your operating system for it to be secure. And then from there you move on. Usually it works that once you secure the system according to the specification, nothing really runs. So then you need to make an exceptions, but you only make exceptions that are required for the specific application that you plan to run on top of that operating system baseline. So that's the way to secure. I mean, banks do it when they deploy PCI DSS secured applications for payment card processing. They start with the CIA security baseline and move on from there. So if you want to have a good security, it's a good point to start. And it's free for everyone.
I got that link from you, Mark, and it's like hundreds and hundreds of pages, but it's important.
Well, depends on how many operating systems you want to support. I suppose one OS version has like 100 pages.
It's a lot, but it's worth it.
You can pay like $100 and you get a script that does it for you.
Does anyone have advice for Windows users? Has anyone touched on Windows yet?
There is a CIS baseline for Windows as well.
Okay. So if someone if a new person arrives and they want to use Windows, you can, and just make sure you're very familiar with the Windows PowerShell. I don't use it. You can't use the command line, right? You got to use the PowerShell.
That's correct.
Okay.
Johnny, do you want to talk about Windows at all? I mean, I don't know if you've played around with it, because you mentioned that earlier in the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I'm new to it, the setup that's required, but in general, it does require familiarity with PowerShell. And but from what I've seen, there are some good references that are out there already in terms of guides that you can follow to get everything set up and going. And I think that's going to prove over time with some of the scripts that they're planning on releasing. So, I'm actually looking forward to that because I think that will make the process a bit easier. So I think that, definitely could be some challenges, but the plan is that it will be supported. But
Okay. And my main suggestion for new arrivals is make sure you check in your router, your home router, your firewall, your Wi-Fi router. Check your manufacturer's website for the make and model on how to port forward correctly. If you don't know how to port forward correctly, you might not have the skills to run a pool. Okay, just to be honest with you. So you're going to have to build your skills. You're going to have to take the advice of all these folks we got here. These folks are the experts. But you got to port forward correctly. If you don't, you could compromise your network. You just can't port forward everything. If you do, your network is probably compromised. So make sure you check your manufacturer make model website and get that done correctly. So I think that was very important. Early on, that was a big problem. It's not a big problem lately, but now there's a new feature in the protocol. If you misconfigure your node, it might get ignored. Does anyone know what the specifics are on that? Is it ignored? Is it banned? Is it?
So there is it's first quarantined, and if it's quarantined for a long time, then it's removed from the gossips, and you can then, if you fix your issue, you can reconnect and get gossiped around again. So it's not like permanent ban, but I don't know what the time parameters are. But they first they quarantine you, and so you won't get advertised to the new peers. And if the issues continues and persist, then you will be removed from the stream.
And the protocol quarantines you, not a person. So if you misconfigure
it's the protocol
node,
itself.
Yeah. So I can't go ask you and say, hey, can you unban my node? Can I do that? Can you unban my node?
I don't think there is not that functionality available yet, but it's definitely as one of the open GitHub issues for that to be added there.
Although it's a little interesting if you have 100.
Ban someone on purpose.
Well, if you have 100 nodes, you probably could.
Yeah, but the key is it's part of the protocol. So make sure you got your nodes configured correctly, and if you don't, it's going to get quarantined. That's a good word for it.
Can I ask about that? Because in the early guides, I messed up a bit, but it seems to be very robust. It's not something that will quarantine you easily, because I think I was never quarantined, and even I messed up some of the guides early. So it's something that takes a while. You have to, right? That's a question to the others.
The quarantine came with RC6, so it wasn't there before.
Right.
Okay. That's good. Thank you, guys. Thank you. So the next question, I have a question for all of you. Maybe it's a lighter question, a little bit off topic, but we're here. Cardano has been trading on the markets for a little bit over 2 years now. And I mean, we're all here right now in the barest of bear markets. So these are the hardcore enthusiasts right here. If you've made it up until this point, you are a Cardano fan or a Cardano enthusiast. You enjoy the project. So what brought you guys here? Why are you here 2 years later? Why are you dedicating your time? What brought you to this project? What are the highlights that keep you going? I mean, this is a popcorn question, so anyone can take it.
Yeah, for me, it's the technology itself, really. I would really like to see if proof of stake is something available for blockchain networks. And this is, I think, the experiment where we will see if that's the case or not.
Thank you, Marek.
For me, it was definitely about just the discipline in general of the whole project. I come from a corporate background, and many years of experience at former company I worked at, and just to see their approach, it was very familiar in terms of how things are done, scientific rigor, just the openness of the project in general. Definitely a fan, definitely a believer. Like I said, long-time investor, and in it for the long term. So I see where we're going, and I like that vision and that potential of where we're heading.
Thanks, Johnny.
For me, it was the scientific foundation that the project is built on top. but I have to disagree with Johnny that from the beginning the project was well organized. I don't think it was. There was no corporate structures, like project management was totally missing. They didn't know if they want to do waterfall or agile or what. So in the beginning, the corporate structures that he says that he's used to from the organization he works for, I don't believe they've been there for long. They are actually still building them. Even the user level support is still ramping up. So they are going to build a new team that will support the users when the staking comes. That will need an operational support organization that it's in the process of building, and so on and so forth. During those 2 years that IOHK has been let's say discussed publicly, they came a long way, but they still have a long way to go. But in the beginning, it was just the garage startup for me, from the point of processes and behaving like a corporation. But the science was solid, and that's what kept me around.
For me, it's well, I have a scientific background, so the science was obviously also very important to me. But the main thing is the transparency, because unlike other companies, when IOHK mess up, they actually learn from it, and they have transparency to the community about what their mix-ups are. And I have seen them evolve greatly, and I think it's just a very clever project, the way they're investing into Africa infrastructure, the way they're into Mongolia now, and just the technology behind. If you manage to read some of those scientific papers, they're amazing, really amazing technology behind it.
Thank you, guys. Kyle, did you want to say anything, or?
Nothing that's already been said, I guess.
Okay.
I mean, the specific moment was Charles's whiteboard video. But yeah, I mean, I'll just echo whatever everybody else has already said.
Okay.
But I'll say, I want a Lambo.
I'll just take a taco, Rick.
I want to try the farm Lambo.
The Lambo truck, yeah.
Yeah.
The Lambo tractor? The Lambo tractor.
The Lambo tractor.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't want a Lambo. I want a Porsche.
I wanna physically run a stake pool on the moon.
Charles is going to Antarctica. We got to pressure him to take something down there, run a node in Antarctica so we can put Antarctica on the map. That's almost the moon. If you can do Antarctica, you can do the moon.
Marek can do that, right?
Yeah.
There are fibers in there are fiber connections in Antarctica, so it should be possible.
Yeah, they have science stations there, so
yeah.
They do.
These are limitless, that's for sure.
Yeah. No, it'll be test platform Antarctica, and the next stop is the moon.
The problem is, I think that whatever you put in there, you cannot fix for 3 months. In a year.
Just SpaceX shuttle there.
Well, I'm not talking about moon. I'm talking about the Antarctica now.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Due to weather, the scientific stations are inaccessible for 3 months in a year.
Right.
Oh. And isn't it dark for like 6 months and then light for 6 months?
Darkness is okay. I mean, Janssen is from Norway. I used to live in Finland, so darkness, that's fine. But the winds and below 60 degrees temperatures kind of complicate flying.
But the CPU will run cool, right? So
yeah. You can.
Very cool.
It's called air-free AC, right?
Yeah.
Oh man.
So, speaking about the moon, we're going to talk about, it's not so much numbers, but it's more about what do you think is an optimum type of incentive structure for pools moving forward? And I'm not talking about percentages or rewards that stake pool operators should receive, or even rewards that community members should receive. But moving forward, you guys are here very early. We're hitting the incentivized testnet very soon. After that, we're going to be hitting the mainnet. And personally, my thoughts are that as we hit the mainnet, the stake pool operators should be the system should be created in a way that rewards the stake pool operators for running solid pools, and it's something that should be rewarding you for the time that you put in and making sure that you are incentivized to continue running your node or continue running your pool, and making sure that you can contribute long term into the ecosystem. So I don't know. I mean, there was a blog post and papers writing about, you know, the race down to zero as far as the incentivized test, as far as the test net, as far as rewards. What do you guys think is the proper mechanisms that IOHK should put in place to maybe incentivize the pools to keep on moving forward and looking 2-3 years in advance? How should the business run? I don't know if any of you have thought about that, or this might be a strange question, but it's a popcorn question again, and I'll throw it to anyone.
In the beginning, given the value of the tokens and the expected fees that's been like thrown around by other people in the group, I think it's gonna be difficult for anybody who wants to run, let's say, an enterprise class service to even cover the operational expenses. Not to talk about the hardware appreciation and the human resources costs involved. But if the ecosystem is going to grow and the price of the tokens will increase, then it can easily turn the other way around, and the pool operators can make quite a good profit. But I think in the beginning, if you really want to run it professionally, it's gonna be tough from the cash flow perspective. So I cannot speak what should IOHK do, but the stakeholders, what they should do is that they should pick somebody. Instead of somebody running it in the basement of his house, they should pick somebody who runs it in a data center, and so on and so forth, because the more reliable the infrastructure will be, the more reliable will be the network overall, and there is always will be a time to move to more decentralization. But in the beginning, if you lose those who operate on a top-notch infrastructure, it's gonna be hard for them to come back.
I agree with that, actually. I think in the beginning, IOHK and Cardano Foundation and Emilgo will probably delegate some of the AIDA they are holding to the stake operators, which are active right now, because I don't think any of us has efficient funds to actually run a serious staking pool from the beginning. If you do the math, you need at least 1 million of AIDA to just have one block per epoch right now. So I think that's the threshold, and that's something they will have to do actually, to delegate their funds not only to their private staking pools to earn the rewards, but also to the other community members.
Yeah, I agree with that. Marek is right. I calculated approximately 3 million. So 1 to 3 million is not unreasonable as a pledge, not as locked up, but as a pledge to get a reasonable. But we don't know yet, because that's why we're doing testnet. So we'll find out. Lars Brunjes did write a paper that describes that factor, the A0 or P0 or something like that. A0 that allows someone who has a lower amount of stake, they can still do well if they market their pool well, if they're clever, creative, they have a nice product, they draw people in. Basically, if you can draw people in, you can succeed. However, at the same time, the amount of stake is also important. So these are good points to bring up for the viewers, and the stakers, the people who are delegating to the pools that we're going to be running.
So for me, as a background in psychology and law, I think it's important to remember that unlike a proof of work where it's purely a hardware-based process, proof of stake is much more a social process. It's the community who builds and supports. I hope there's a room, and I totally support what you have said here today. Like, we need good pools that are professional, that can be secure, and can run efficiently. So I hope the community will support that. At the same time, I hope there's a room for a little bit of both. We have some free pools, we have some smaller hobbyist pools. Hopefully, And as we have discussed earlier today, it's a progress. It's not something that's set in stone here and now. Maybe in the future there's much more need for decentralization. So I hope there will be a room also for the little guys.
I mean,
Yes.
I'll add to that and say, I kind of disagree with the pools today needing to be super stable. I almost want them to not be, just so that we can iron out those bugs.
Yeah, in the testing period.
Yeah, I mean, no, even so, I mean, we're never going to iron out all the bugs ever in software, right? Like, it's just, you've stopped adding features if you stopped adding bugs, right? So, but if we can have all kinds of different deployments, stability, and stability, then we'll be able to catch those things sooner. So I would say the earlier we have more instability, the better. But as an aside, just to comment on what IOHK should do, I don't know. I kind of like them not making a whole lot of decisions and letting those decisions kind of get made once the centralization is in place. But that kind of depends on the treasury and voting and all kinds of other things. But yeah, that's all I have to say.
I'd like to circle back. Wait, sorry.
I was just going to say, the old saying, no pain, no gain. And I tell you what, all y'all been feeling that pain.
Not the pain.
Y'all been feeling that pain.
Yeah.
And I admire all of your work. You guys done great. I'm sorry, Philippe. Go ahead, sir.
I just want to jump off what Mark was saying, and Marek, and all of you guys. And I agree with you, Mark, that the enterprise level solutions, I think that's where it's at. I think that's what's going to, when Cardano is marketing itself in the future and we're trying to get new institutions to invest, new people to invest, having a robust ecosystem where you have these professional services that are running and making sure that they're consistently running. And at the beginning, rewarding that in a way that you don't scare off all the serious server operators and they never come back. Because this protocol runs a little bit differently because, first of all, it's proof of stake. But if you compare it with Bitcoin, and when Bitcoin drops over a certain threshold for a price, miners shut down. But the difference with Bitcoin is it's already hit that kind of network effect. So miners will come back. We're so early in Cardano that, if you drop it too low, or if the threshold goes too low, they may not come back because we haven't hit that same network effect that Bitcoin has. And it's very important in the beginning to make sure that the incentives make sense and that the correct pools are being rewarded.
It's like the Genko tree. We need it to grow. We need to have it's fragile in the beginning to be very strong. That's why.
Felt like a jump start.
I just want to make a comment about like enterprise class pools. I don't think it's expensive to run an enterprise class pool, right? Like, especially if you're running, say, an instance in AWS or GCP or something like that. If you can build in redundancy there, those are things that cost tens of dollars a month. And if you yourself have enough data, or you get delegated to, it's probably going to be fairly easy to recoup the costs of those things.
That's the thing. Most of the enterprises I work with, they don't consider AWS, GCE, or whatever public cloud to be the enterprise class.
I would disagree.
It's good for their research. It's good for testing, but they wouldn't put their SAP on it.
I would disagree with that. I work in finance. I work with tons of financial institutions, largest in the world, and they're all using GCP, AWS, Azure.
For certain type of workloads.
No, for production. I
agree with Kyle.
They are 100% using the cloud for production workloads, serving transactional data live in production.
The amazing thing is that the community can choose. We can have some working on this solution, others on that, and this will evolve naturally as people delegate to it.
I don't like the cloud for security reasons.
Well,
I don't like some other sysadmin having access to my software.
Well, for instance, at AWS they don't, because they use in-memory encryption. But the That's not the only thing. I mean, the censorship comes in play once you have too much nodes running on the public cloud. Well, AWS decides, okay, let's shut down all the Cardano pools. Well, that's what's gonna happen, right? They can do it. Nothing stopping them. So
Sure, but then,
it creates a
well,
centralization within a decentralized system.
yeah, but
Exactly.
you have multiple cloud providers. Then you also have dedicated server providers. Like you can go to OVH or Hetzner and get yourself a relatively cheap dedicated server for like $30 a month. So, I mean, unless you're getting co-located space yourself with a provider, fine, then you're less likely to be censored. But there are still a number of providers that you can choose today, right? Like, you know, in 5 years from now, fine. But if we're talking about today, I think running an enterprise class pool is not going to be cost prohibitive.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. The only thing cost prohibitive I've heard people say is if the bandwidth stayed up. There's extremely large bandwidth consumption at one point, and it was going to cost people hundreds, if not $1,000 a month to sustain gigabytes per day. But apparently that's been corrected.
Well, the bandwidth is still kind of high for it to run on AWS. If other nodes will be outside of the AWS,
Right.
because that's the thing, right? With these public clouds, you pay for egress outside of their environment. So you know, if everybody would be running on AWS, it would basically be for free. But if there will be the bigger the mix will be, the higher the bandwidth cost will be on the public clouds.
I think what we will see is exactly the same as we see in this debate. We'll have a mixed community. Some will prefer AWS servers for the simplicity of it, and some will cherish the decentralization. I'm on that side, like Mark. Like I want to have a geographically placed server with its own hardware. But I think we'll see a mix of it. That's what's really going to happen.
I
And
agree.
that's the beauty of a decentralization protocol. You cannot really dictate where you are hosting the node. Anyone can join.
Yeah.
And it's up to them.
Right.
That is true. Johnny, sorry.
No, I agree.
I wanted to add that, I mean, if we fast forward 2-3 years from now, I mean, if you look at the distribution of Bitcoin mining machines now, you know, you see that most of them are in China and they're run by 3 major staking pool services. So when we move in the future, 2-3 years in the future, if everyone's running on using cloud services, we're going to have a similar pie chart. And, you know, there'll be another crypto project that says, wow, look at this centralization within a decentralized world. And is this a solution? So what's our pie chart going to look like? What's our graph going to look like? Because someone's going to graph us in the future, and we have to be cognizant of that. So I guess a mix of everything will probably be the solution, and the market will decide what they want.
So that's a good thing about Cardano is that in a future the on-chain governance can change the fact, right? If we as the stakeholders won't be happy with the fact that 90% of the network is running on the public cloud, it's very easy to identify what is or what is not running on the public cloud by the association with the autonomous system and the IP address of the node. So we can put an incentive into the protocol that whatever is running on a public cloud infrastructure will get its reward slashed by 10%, and those 10% will be distributed to either, you know, who is not running on a public node or put into the treasury for future development and so on and so forth. Once we have that on-chain governance, the possibilities are really limitless.
Yes.
For the desirability factor, like it doesn't always have to be an ADA penalty. It can say, oh, that's not desirable, but that would be voted on after ProleteR. So, yeah.
I think the financial incentives are always stronger than the social incentives. You know, if people are like, okay, I can delegate it to this pool that has like 30% fee, or I can put it to this AVS that has like 5% fee, they're gonna be like, okay, let's make a little bit more money and delegate it to the 5% public cloud. But if there will be actual protocol incentive, then you can level the field. But we'll see. That's what the testnet is for, and that's and the production itself is going to provide even more data.
Yeah, And the desirability does translate into profits in the end. It's just a matter of, which parameter do you tweak? The desirability, the reward, some factor, some number that's used. But yeah. All right. Hey, good stuff, guys. We're getting a lot out of this conversation, man.
Yeah. So we know we're going to have some serious debates in the future then if all of us are here. We already see the seeds of it growing here, but
it's
we
good.
love it. Yeah. We love it.
Yeah. And it's good to have that. You got people who support, the cloud infrastructure, people who support bare metal servers. And I got to be honest with you guys, I don't want the enterprise grade like the Amazons and the Googles and the Apples. I don't want them yet. I want you guys to become them. I want one of you to become the next Google or the next Apple. We don't need them. They already made their money. They already got their thing. Maybe Kyle over there will make one, and John. It may be you guys. You're the ones who are making it. Mark probably has one. He probably works for Google. No, I'm just kidding. But that's probably going to be one of y'all. Okay, we could just build our own.
That is true.
We don't need Apple. We don't need Google.
Jeff Bezos has it all already. Well, he doesn't need any more.
We don't need to shovel money into Amazon. We don't need to push money into their butts.
Well, actually, Amazon was in an operational loss until they came up with ABS.
That is true.
Yes, that brought them from the hole.
Yeah, huge margins.
It wasn't all that garbage I buy on the internet from Amazon.
No, they were losing money on that.
Yeah.
Can I add one more thing that I think touching on the social process and what Mark said, I think also most users will pick the one that's slightly more financial, better off for them. But like now with Cardano effect, you have a voice, and I think some pools will have that like kind of a voice also, and users will pick those pools out of a social context. So I think we'll see a mix of that too. Financial and social interest will intervene in how you will pick your pool.
Yes. And who knows what the future holds? If this project moons one day and everyone watching this podcast still holds their ADA, chances are you'll have a lot of wealth at your disposal, and you'll be able to make more sound decisions, not solely based on the financial standing of your holdings, but maybe based on furthering the ecosystem when money doesn't maybe matter to you as much, and maybe you just want to see it grow even more and see it last another 10, 20 years. We'll see.
No, if it's not forbidden to talk about the different projects and to coming back to the enterprise class services, I don't know if anybody of you follow Tezos, but 2 days ago, Coinbase announced that they are going to provide a public staking service, and Charles in his MMA actually commented on that as well. The price of the token surged by 45% during that day.
Yeah.
So,
wow,
amazing. Staking as a service.
Obviously, having the enterprise backing of a big entity behind that can make a lot of investors bring trust into the project.
And that's in a bear market, so that's pretty impressive. And I did a quick video on that. If you look at it, it promises 5% staking returns for Tezos. And then there's a little asterisk. So if you go in the term and conditions, Coinbase is taking a fee of 25%. So 25% of before they hand you your rewards. So that's the institution level of what they're charging. But people will choose that just because of the security of what Coinbase has to offer.
Yeah, 25% for the mainnet is something where I would be aiming to run that kind of quality service. 24/7, 365, always somebody on the phone if it goes down, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, Mark. And feel free to discuss other projects because there's a lot to be learned from them. For example, I'm trying to get an EOS pool operator on this podcast. So in one of our future pool podcasts, as we have more of these, I might get an EOS expert. He's a really nice guy, and there's something to be learned from their experience. So
is it one of the 21 pools?
Right now it's like number 31, but the top 42. So keep in mind with EOS, the top 42 pools, the 21 are the block producers. The next 21 are on deck. So if now and they pull in. So he's been in the top 21 and has shifted in and out between the top 21 pools. Currently, I think at number 30.
Okay.
But
No, there is one more thing to learn from Tezos, and that's they already have on-chain governance, and recently they had this proposal for Babylon, and they have a very long voting period, meaning that it takes like 3 months from the proposal till the delivery of the update on the chain, and they discovered some bugs about 2 weeks before the proposal, and instead of rolling back the change, they just rolled it out with the hotfix in there, and then 2 weeks after the release on the mainnet, they discovered even more bugs. So when we have the on-chain governance, let's just make sure we won't rush things. Don't be Tezos, be Cardano. Take the time. Not necessarily years delays, but delay by 3 months for something that critical, that should be acceptable.
Yeah, do it the Haskell way, formally verification. What you do the math first.
They did have it verified. They just did the verification wrong. I mean, even formal verification can be wrong. I mean, it's not if you go from wrong assumptions, right? Because you always make the assumption first, and then from there you derive your conclusions and implications. So they actually made a mistake in the assumption, and that's what led to the error.
Yeah, I agree with you. Don't rush things.
I mean, Tezos is written in OCaml, which is also functional. So
yeah. And actually, the OCaml guys split and created their own fork named Dune Network.
Okay.
All right, so I think we're coming up on our last question. We're hitting that point in time, guys.
Yes.
And that is basically, is there anything else you want to add, and anything else, Philippe, you want to throw in there? But does anyone have anything else they would like to add? Just feel free to speak your mind.
No, I would just like everybody to, withdraw the tokens from hardware wallets or from exchanges or whatever they have, and move it for this short period of time between the snapshots to either Daedalus or Yoroi, and give the opportunity to participate in the testnet, because it's gonna test the community. We will be judged on how the testnet will perform. If we will have 90% participation, be sure it will be mentioned in the blockchain focused media. If we have 10%, it will be mentioned as well. So that would be my call out to everyone. You don't need to delegate to my pool, delegate to anyone, or run your own, but just participate in testnet. That's gonna be important for both the marketing and the technical side of things.
And stay safe. Read the guides, how to do this the proper way. We don't want anyone to be ripped off during all of this.
I would say everyone definitely be careful of any scams that may be going. They're likely to be more scam links than valid links. Just double, triple check what you're clicking on and how you're setting things up. We don't want anyone to have any bad experiences or incidents around, participating in a test net, and we do want full participation.
Yeah, I agree. If you are taking funds out of your hardware wallet, be sure you know what you are doing.
Yes.
Kyle, any last words?
I mean, just to add on to that, staking doesn't require you to send your ADA anywhere. So
yeah,
just protect those seed words. Absolutely, that's really important. What he's saying.
If someone is telling you to send them ADA to stake, then they're trying to scam you. So yeah.
That's for sure, and look out for fake versions of Daedalus and Yoroi that might be going around the snapshot dates.
Yes.
But IOHK digitally signs their binaries, so it should be easy to verify, and the operating system should warn you.
Don't jump the gun, everyone. Like they were saying, watch out for scams. You're not sending your ADA to anyone. even if you choose to delegate to any of the staking pools here, you're not sending your ADA, you're delegating your ADA. Wait for formal links from IOHK themselves. Don't jump the gun. There are probably going to be scammers that are waiting right before to give you some phony links. Just take your time, be patient. Like Mark was saying, get your ADA off an exchange if you want to participate. Get your ADA off of a hardware wallet, Ledger Nano S, Trezor. It's not going to work. It's not going to be snapshot ready. And remember that you're helping Cardano. It's going to be in the blockchain media how many or how much ADA is actually delegated. And if you've been in this project long enough, you know there have been significant time delays from part to part. So chances are we're not going to be in the incentivized testnet for only a month. It's probably going to be a few months, and you won't be able to stake if you miss that second snapshot. So it's like if you want to participate, and it's not as hard as you think. There are plenty of people that can answer your questions around, and so if anyone wanted to, we're gonna put everyone's staking pool down below in the description below. I'm not sure if any websites update in the future. We'll be sure to edit this description. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. It's a Saturday morning where we are, but everyone is in various different locations, and we really appreciate it. This is the beginning looks at what the staking pools are going to look like. We had some great guests today, and we think that we can probably do these kind of episodes again. Rick, what do you think? I mean, I think this went very well today, and we're waiting for your feedback. If you want to hear more about these pools, maybe you can drop some questions down below. Send us some questions, so if we do this again, when we do this again, we can ask those particular questions. We are debating, we are talking about things, and whatever information is present right now, that's what we're talking about. So things are going to change as time goes forward. But Rick, I'm going to pass it over to you. If not, we can close this episode. It's been over an hour, and we really appreciate everyone showing up today.
I have nothing else to add. I would like to thank all you guys for coming on the podcast, and you're certainly welcome to come back anytime.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. And until the next episode of the Cardano Effect podcast, bye, everyone.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Thank you. Take care,
It's
guys.
been an honor talking to all of you.
Yeah, it's
Good
been a
talking.
great pleasure. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Take care.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.